The Startup 20 is an engagement group of the G20. We all know that South Africa is hosting the presidency for the G20. This group is set up to support the development of policy recommendations and clear proposal on SMEs and startup. So today we have the conference where we are discussing those proposals in the interim meeting. When the Square Group has done its work, clear recommendations are going to be submitted to the global leaders when they meet in November, making specific recommendations on areas such as foundations and alliances, which means what are those instruments that needs to be put in place to ensure that more and more people can participate in entrepreneurship. Whether you talk about accelerating investment in incubators, accelerators, or building ecosystem that will support SMEs so that more and more people can be successful in business. So what policy instruments must be put in place and what investments must be made to make this thing work. That's one theme. Obviously, the second theme is around finance and investment. How do we make sure that financing is much more accessible to the SMEs and startups, and also is also affordable? So this work group is focusing on that. We're also looking at sustainability and inclusion. We talk about green economy, but also bringing women and youth into business. We need to see what policy recommendations must come out from this engagement group that must be decided by the global leaders. And we also have the market access and trade. We know that one of the key challenges facing SMEs and startups is access to markets. How do we make sure that they can have better access to markets, not only in South Africa, but in the continent as well as globally? So this group is focusing on this. And the last theme is very specific for South Africa. It looks at township entrepreneurship as well as rural entrepreneurship. So that's the task of the Startup 20. Over the next 2 months, we are going to be synthesizing the recommendations of that is some of the policy proposals so that they are ready to be submitted to the global leaders in November. And for South Africa, we're excited because we have the possibility to bring more and more people into this debate around ecosystem of entrepreneurship, finance for SMEs, finance for startups. This creates that platform which ordinarily can be very fragmented. We are bringing it all together so that everyone can participate, it can be more inclusive. So that's the task of the work group for South Africa and for all the G20 countries.
We are here today to the Startup 20 to really have discussions and come up with solutions that can assist most of us, especially us in the African countries, to ensure that we create an ecosystem that will make sure that we create an enabling environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. As we know that small and medium companies are the future for economic growth in our own countries. So we're hoping to come out of this session today with tangible solutions that are going to take our country and other countries within the G20 to the next level in terms of ensuring that we support and we ensure that entrepreneurs grow.
This event for us is really a really good event in that it talks specifically to small business development. Look, I mean, it is clear that small businesses really drive a chunk of our economy, not only in South Africa, but globally. And it's quite exciting to see South Africa being the only country within the G20 that is actually really, taking the first presidency and leading the charge on behalf of the rest of the African continent. Yes, we do have African Union in it, but of course we are happy with the South Africa taking the presidency of this initiative. For us as MTN, we are very proud to be associated with an initiative that is really trying to drive inclusion for small businesses. We believe that the only way you can make small businesses compete with big business is to ensure they are digitally enabled. As a strategic digital partner to the SU20, MTN is really bringing in the power of innovation, the power of technology we have built at the back of the network. Some of the core capabilities small businesses can leverage in partnership with the government. MTN is bringing in fintech capability, which definitely allows small businesses at least to have some kind of records that are needed to be able to get them access to some form of grants, etc., etc. Townships today are actually applying for the sponsorship fund, and we know that the government is actually struggling in ensuring that some of these informal businesses which don't have digital footprint are not able to qualify for the funding that is made available. Leveraging on technology that MTN has made available can really accelerate them one step in terms of just making sure that at least when they are transacting in their shops as spaza shops, there is a POS machine that can actually track your sales on a daily basis, which is part of the information needed to be able to provide some form of credible information to the small business department in affording small businesses access to these funding. There's many other solutions that we are doing as MTN, and we are really excited to actually be changing one township, one SME using one platform at a time.
The purpose here is to then say, how do we improve the environment for startups, for small businesses to thrive in the global south, in the continent? So how then do we look at the issues that can assist us to create jobs, create jobs, employment, make sure that we reduce inequality, and then we grow economies of the G20 countries. We want to take advantage of all the other countries while they are here to learn from them. For example, Brazil, India have relatively done well as far as the startups are concerned. So we're looking at then how do we coordinate as countries to make sure that the ecosystem of startups and ecosystem of small businesses ensures that startups and small businesses thrive. So we're looking at the access to funding, access to market, inclusivity, how do we deal with market concentration, and all those other policies that will assist the global south in ensuring that we grow the SMME and we grow the startups ecosystem, because we all agree, I think, in terms of the job creation, we all agree that for us to be able to create jobs, we need to support small businesses, because that's where entry to the market becomes a little bit easier, so that we can remove the youth that are on the streets. We can then remove them from social grants, and that way we make them contributors or active contributors to their own economies.
So what we're hoping to see come out of the SU20 is some policy innovation that's going to bring manufacturing back home, making things easier than importing, allowing us to take what we create here to the world.
Built in South Africa, one of the challenges we've got in competing in the global landscape is finding ways in which we can tap into government support in order to fast track our development and compete with other innovative products that are coming up out of Europe. We've often found it difficult to work and get ourselves into government and working with government entities that can really propel us and our growth so that we can be globally competitive. And that is the key reason why we're here at the SU20, to try and see how we can connect more closely with relevant partners and relevant development agencies that can help our growth and our development so that we can be globally competitive.
I think the program has been amazing so far. The stakeholders we've met in the room, I think, are quite critical to the policy contributions that need to be made to enable entrepreneurship in the ecosystem. Really looking for ways to enable actual market access opportunities for founders more so. My interest is in the tech space, so something I'm quite interested in, and I hope we can have some fruitful discussions there and outcomes.
As we go to the G20 at the end of the year, those are some of the things that need to come from platforms of this nature, whereby we start getting the insights from the actual individuals that are impacted on a daily basis, and ultimately we're able to shift those insights up to policymakers to make sure that as we craft policy, we craft policies that are actionable, that will help the everyday man on the streets to start their business, to actually thrive in the economy like South Africa, that will help that SME to create the various jobs that are needed in this country to boost the economy, and ultimately not only for this country but the continent at large. I think if you look at South Africa, yes, we are pretty much a blueprint of what you're likely to find as you go into the broader African landscape. And I suppose what we can do here is drive and spearhead that change that is required across the continent to drive the economy of the various countries that we see on this continent, and ultimately make it inclusive and make them global players as well within their own right.
It's been quite engaging, and it's been a conversation that's been around, and that's very much needed given that most people in South Africa are unemployed, so entrepreneurship is kind of our saving grace at this moment. So seeing different policymakers and seeing different government bodies as well as like business people coming together to discuss their way forward in terms of startup and in terms of moving forward in entrepreneurship, it's tense because you kind of have an expectations of the answers that you want to hear or whatever that you want to engage on, but what has been discussed so far, because we've had like a few conversations, has been very insightful, and it also evokes thought. It brings certain things into attention, or it continues on the conversations that we've been having in the ecosystem. So I think it's gonna go well, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the policies are gonna develop, and after the policies, what actions are gonna be taken.
This is a very good initiative and great gathering for ensuring that inclusiveness. Already seen from the panels, it's topical that we need to look at rural and township areas. But not only should we look at them, but we need to find ways of de-risking these small businesses, provide the right products for them. So it's a very good and valuable, and we need to ensure that all policy engagements lead towards ensuring all the presidencies support our initiative in terms of growing the small areas.
I think having such a platform where we are able to create policies for small businesses beyond South Africa is something that is needed, and also being able to put the bilateral agreements that are across that for small businesses is important, that then we're able to address our unemployment and other things that are happening. So today is the first step to greatness for small business, for small enterprising, for emerging enterprises, and I hope this is when G20 America comes, we as South Africa have paved the way.
I work with entrepreneurs across the African continent, and I'm here at the Startup 20 convening meeting, and I think this is an amazing initiative in the sense that policymakers from the G20 countries are committed to seeing how policy is shaped a little bit differently, and leveraging from what is happening in other emerging economies, especially from the global south. Because when you look at what is happening, whether it's in Brazil, in South Africa, in Nigeria, or they've got similar economies, and one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, especially here in South Africa, we're having the presidency for the G20, is that we've got the highest unemployment rate in the world. We've got the highest Gini coefficient in the world, and we've got crazy poverty levels, and we need new solutions. And seeing that some of these policies are geared towards shaping the environment for township and rural-based SMEs is an important thing to be done, because if we can enable trade and make sure that there's inclusion that is being driven here for the small business community, we might see change. And that change really is about how do you translate policy into action.
the entrepreneurship development must start from primary school until to university, so to make sure that across the G20 countries, the curriculum, which is practical curriculum, which talks about traits of entrepreneurs that can be offered from high school. Now, so that's one part we have and the second part we also talk about sandboxes after school, when we find many of young people looking for opportunities. They can go out to centers, they can get the content which allows them to start the business, and they can learn from the local heroes, storytelling. They can learn from the local contests to make sure that they start their business. And the third one was more like this could be done through the collaboration of private sector supporting the policy to make it possible.
As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, it's really to understand what is being brought to the table. Is it about policy? Is it about market to access? And those are some of the things we would like to hear. And thank you to the chair and everybody that's bringing this program together. And we hope that these policies are implemented. We're just not talking, and we benefit market to access, the insights, and also just collaboration with other people.
Ours is to share the skill, the knowledge, and also the expertise amongst the G20 participants. But for us as the association, we strongly believe that financial inclusion is very important, especially in the continent, and also inclusion for the masses of our people in Africa.
Let's just hope it gets implemented. I think that's the most important thing that came out as well, to say, okay, cool, a lot of policies are being drafted, plans are there, very good plans. Even the last 2 years when the SG20 was started, there were good plans, but where's the implementation? And what we're saying is, of course, the nice thing about it now is that there are the players on the ground. We do have, for example, those rural entrepreneurs that are here. We do have the people that are coming from the township that are represented here. So we're hoping that in terms of listening to what it is that really needs to happen in the townships, for example, we'll be able to then get to a level and point that once it's adopted as a policy, then it can be implemented.
We're hoping that through this, ultimately we will facilitate conversation and more than anything, influence the policy that will make the G20 quite an instrument that will unlock prosperity for the startups and the SMEs in the different countries, especially in Africa.
This is how to ignite or instill the idea that township and rural areas have the potential to self-sustain and self-resolute in terms of finding their own place within the economic framework. So from what we'll be taking from here is a directive, and this directive will be a tool that will be used to sort of give these township and rural area SMEs and enterprises opportunity to participate in the mainstream economy. So we will be in essence creating enablers from this task force and from the documents from the task force.